I want to address a weird historical inconsistency. The most recognized names in early American history are George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Paul Revere. The first people on this list were some of the most educated, dedicated, articulate, and durable politicians in early America. And then there's Paul Revere, whose claim to fame is an 8-hour horse ride. How did Paul Revere wind up on this list of memorable Americans? We now know of Paul Revere only because of a poem written about his midnight ride that was published 85 years after it happened, when prior to the Civil War, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was looking for an unsung hero. If not for that poem, Americans would largely have forgotten Paul Revere. But it turns out that Paul Revere is on that list, because even though the politicians made the headlines and the history books, there are many other people of that era whose accomplishments shaped this country for 250 years. Case in point, Paul Revere, who was one of the greatest businessmen, entrepreneurs, and innovators of his time. Paul Revere ushered in changes to American industry that are still with us. Today's Paul Revere Heritage Site is dedicated to the influence that Paul Revere had for over 2 centuries of American commerce. Business-wise, Paul Revere started small. He was an apprentice to his silversmith father. And at the ripe old age of 19, he found himself the owner of the business after his father passed away in 1754. Now try to imagine what he was up against. Still a teenager, he had to manage the silver shop, purchase tools and raw materials, design products, supervise apprentices and skilled laborers, determine what to produce, advertise and sell products, and oversee quality control. That's quite a responsibility for a teenager. But over the next 16 years, he overcame the adversity of his situation and became the most prestigious silversmith in the colonies. Returning to the shop, he did so with a desire to build efficient businesses with new products that would appeal to a large, untapped market or markets and generate lots of income and profit while he was at it. He wanted to be a big businessman. What does it take for anyone to be the kind of business person Paul Revere wanted to be? Well, such a person needs to visualize new markets, opportunities, needs to plan, execute, create, innovate, all the while never losing sight of the bottom line. To innovate means to apply something that already exists to a new problem. As you'll see, Paul Revere was not just a good innovator, he was a master innovator. He loved to solve business problems by applying stuff that others had already developed, and he continued to do so until he retired at the age of 76 in 1811. Using the shop's savings, he purchased the machine from England and had it smuggled out. The British saw it as a high-tech piece of equipment. They would not allow it to leave the country. Revere arranged for this machine, called a flatting mill, to help him build his business. That one innovation, that one machine revolutionized Revere's silversmithing, paved the way for decades of business growth. Having entered new markets, Revere now had other ideas. He didn't want to stop there. Silver was expensive. Sometimes workable silver was hard to obtain, but iron was inexpensive and readily available, and everyone bought iron products. Revere took a huge risk. He used savings from the silver shop to build that big furnace. Risk-taking is a hallmark of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are business people who take on the risks of establishing new businesses. With Revere's decision to start an iron foundry, he became an entrepreneur, and he did not stop launching new products and businesses for the next 15 years. Revere opened his iron business in 1788, and it wasn't long before his iron factory was producing small iron products than any other competitor. Revere had learned how to create successful new factories. Opportunist is another trait of being a good entrepreneur. Number 1, 1892, a 500-pound bell in his church steeple cracked. Leaders of the church were resigned to sending that cracked bell back to England to be melted down and recast. Would have cost a lot of money. But Revere did the numbers in his head. If he could figure out how to make large bells, he'd be able to leverage the big furnace that he just created to melt the brass bell down and then recast it. He found out how to make big brass bells by befriending the few bell makers in America. Over the course of the next several years, he made hundreds of huge bells. Opportunity number 2. Once Revere had this big bell thing figured out, he figured he could also make big brass cannons or bronze cannons. This required him to develop a completely new marketing strategy. Military in Revere's era was also a bureaucratic maze. So Revere had to learn the art of working through the military-industrial complex of the 1700s. And once again, he did it successfully. And needless to say, he made a lot of money. Now we're on to the third opportunity. In 1801, 65-year-old Paul Revere, living in Boston with his family, he fathered 16 children in his lifetime. He was managing several factories, watching his savings grow year after year. He decided to spend every dime of his savings and borrowed more to boot to open a mill on a parcel of land 4 hours from the home that he had for years that would roll copper sheets. He built the factory on the grounds of what is now the Paul Revere Heritage Site in Canton, Massachusetts, and developed his copper rolling mill process through trial and error. In 1802, his factory rolled the sheets to cover the dome of the Massachusetts State House. In 1803, his factory rolled the copper that the Navy used to sheathe the USS Constitution. And he did not stop there. Within a few years, he was also selling many other copper products to the Navy. Upon Revere's retirement in 1811, his son Joseph Warren assumed management of the company. Joseph Warren took after his father. He was a superb businessman. Under his direction, the company continued to grow. 2 of his wise investments included building a barn to house the horses and oxen he needed to move materials between the many buildings that now dotted the site in 1845, and a brick copper rolling mill in 1850. Joseph Warren passed away in 1868. His descendants ran the company until 1900, when the Revere Copper Company merged with the Taunton Copper Company. The original site remained vacant until 1909, when the Plymouth Rubber Company moved in. Plymouth Rubber also grew quickly, and by the mid-1960s employed about 1,000 people on the site. However, the Plymouth Rubber Company went bankrupt in 2005. The parcel of land was a polluted industrial wasteland. The developer purchased it in 2006, hoping to build over 700 residential units on the parcel. Negotiations with the town of Canton ended in 2015, nearly 10 years later, with an agreement to split the parcel in 2. The larger 2/3 would be developed for housing, while the smaller 1/3 ultimately became the Paul Revere Heritage Site. Paul Revere passed away over 200 years ago, but you can still experience his thought processes by visiting the Paul Revere Museum of Discovery and Innovation, or MODI for short, inside Joseph Warren's historic barn at the Paul Revere Heritage Site. What will visitors find in MODI? A museum that will challenge them to think like Paul Revere did, and every innovator that followed in his footsteps. MODI was designed to be experienced. And like opportunistic Paul Revere, I hope you take up the challenge by visiting MODI yourself, learning about the Paul Revere that never made the history books, and just having a lot of fun.